Hello, my name is Peyton Dunn. I chose to do my final project for urban sociology on robberies in college towns, focusing specifically on Westfield, Mass, due to the fact that it's the school that we all go to and it is now the town that I live in. I will preface this quickly by saying I'm very sorry that my voice is not usually this weak, but it's cold season and I definitely lost out. So moving on, but I will start us off with a brief history of Westfield. It was first founded by the Roanoke Indians. Native American tribes owned it. And it wasn't until 1699 that it was sold to the Europeans. The Europeans kind of divided it by different plots of land, so it yielded different crops. It was agriculture based town for 150 years. Once those 150 years ceased, Westfield struggled for the most part, just trying to make ends meet with the yield that they were supplying due to the crops. There was a lot of conflict between the Roanokes and the Europeans. As time went on, Westfield was kind of broken down by a lot of people leaving due to fear of Native American retaliation and attacks. If you've ever driven around Westfield, you've definitely still seen the name Roanoke, like the Roanoke River. Different companies with the name in it, so their Native American heritage still kind of remains strong, but ultimately the Europeans kind of succeeded out of the fight, and as time went on, agriculture died out and it turned into an industrial making based city that specialized in making bricks, whips, and cigars. Interestingly enough, again, if you've ever driven around Westfield, you've definitely seen a town sign, a company, something with Whip City in it, or like the Whip or Whip City Candle, because that was their main product that they produced throughout Westfield. The whips themselves were made out of hickory wood, and the whips were made for horse and buggy carriages to whip the horses to move faster. And their average product yield was 30,000 whips in one day, which I thought was very interesting. So moving on to the social issues of robbery, starting off with the conflict theory. Anyone who's ever taken any sociology-based class has certainly heard of the conflict theory. It's one of the very first ones I remember learning, but the reason this one kind of made the most sense to me was because of the split party issue it brings up, like the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The proletariat would rebel against the bourgeoisie and in return go after those who own businesses within the city by robbing them. Terms we can use today is socioeconomic class level, so upper class versus lower class being the bourgeoisie, lower class being the proletariat. A good quote to kind of break this down and explain this better that I found in an academic journal from the University of Minnesota that I read was the class consciousness in turn leads them to revolt against the bourgeoisie to eliminate the oppression and exploration they suffer. This is meaning that by lower class people robbing upper class people, it kind of brings them down to their level almost when they have less product to make money, or they have less money because that was stolen against them. It's almost a way to even the playing field and kind of rebel against the different classes and the class structure that having people who make a lot of money and people that don't make as much money in the same area creates for itself. But moving on to the spatial issue of robbery. I wanted to break down spatial and social into two different slides and kind of explain them in a basic term in regards to robbery, just because it was interesting to me how this kind of stuff can be affected and how the social is so different from the spatial. But the spatial, they use many different scales to measure the spatial differences in order to determine robbery per capita almost, or per population. The one that I saw most commonly, the terms I kept seeing reappear, were the macro environment and the micro environment. Starting with the macro environment, the external factors in an environment is what it's referring to. These external factors can be fiscal policy, inflation, employment rates, consumer spending, things that are bringing in money. They're number-based, they are money-based, ever-changing money-based, so I know inflation's been something that's been a lot in the news where a lot of people are kind of seeing it, being affected by it. That would be your macro environment, is how much things went up per inflation in the area you live in. Moving on to micro environment, those would be the internal factors in an environment. Those would be employees, suppliers, media, consumers, shareholders. So we can kind of see how they relate to each other. Obviously, consumer spending, you need the consumers to do the spending. Employees, you need to employ people to establish an employment rate, so they do feed into each other. But these would all depend on the city size, population size, and how close people live to industrial sectors. So people typically rob in less crowded areas, and there's less chances of getting caught that way because less people. But that can kind of be a double-edged sword. Like, for example, if we look at airports, there's a lot of robberies that happen near airports, which I thought was very interesting, because it's a lot of people coming and going. There's so many new faces every few hours, you're not going to recognize who you saw, like, in the store, running out, stuff like that, because it's a large number of people, but a very low population. So, like I said, a lot of people coming in, going out, and a very low population. A lot of people don't have housing near airports, and if you do, it's typically based in lower class neighborhoods, because the sound of planes people find challenging to live near. But moving on to the city of Westfield itself, it's considered one of the safer U.S. cities. It's a 57 out of 100 scale, 100 being the safest, so it's over halfway of being the safest. There's an average of 413 crimes per year, broken down just in our little sector of Westfield itself. 328 of those crimes would be property crimes, and 85 of those would be violent. Violent meaning rape, murder, things of that nature. Property meaning embezzlement, fraud, different classifications of robbery. And the crime rate was measured by 1,000 residents, so 8.03 of it was property crimes, and 2.08% were violent crimes. I will explain this map to my right. You can kind of see by the bottom on the scale what levels it out. So the most dangerous is more of the middle part of the town. So that would be East Main Street area. So that would be like the plaza area, because there's a lot of business there, but not a lot of people living there, so it's easy to get in and get out. You're not on your own home turf for the most part. You can see that by our college specifically, Route 90 or Route 20, Russell Road area, Western Ave area, the color is a little bit darker, which I did find to be interesting, because I assumed that, with the college it would be the safest area because there's more patrol there, but due to the fact that there's college students and things happening, crime rates do increase. Moving on to how the social and spatial issues apply to Westfield. Social, there's a wide range of people in different economic classes and persistent movement throughout the city. Being a college town, Westfield has people constantly visiting, moving in, exploring, and leaving, causing the route of crime to be hard to track. So we get an influx of people coming in the end of summer, leaving middle of winter, coming back the end of winter, and leaving early summer. So it is hard to keep track of the different kinds of people you see coming in, and if those people come in and cause different crimes, it's hard to find what specific area is doing it, what specific type of people are doing it. You have people that are visiting their friends in college, which can apply to a lot of people, coming here could be doing something wrong, committing different crimes, and then they leave. Applying in spatial terms, it has the elements of a city while the space of a rural town. So it's considered a largely suburban area, meaning that it's a town that has active business, but it's on the outskirts of bigger cities. In these terms, referring to Holyoke and Springfield and West Springfield. So people can easily blend in with the crowd or hide out in less populated areas. So there is easier ways to kind of get in, get out, do the crime you want to commit, in this case, robbery, and kind of go to a place that's more remote where you're going to see less people, so it's going to be less easy to identify who you are. We're moving on to a look into Westfield's robbery rate. We can see that the crime rate in Westfield in terms of robbery is slightly higher than most cities this size. Looking at it on a scale that I cited in the end, it was graded a C minus, which is low for this kind of town, but it is in the 30th percentile for safety. But most people consider the southeast parts of Westfield to be the safest, while the western neighborhoods are the most dangerous in terms of robbery. So the chance of being a victim is 1 in 1,072 people in the more western-based neighborhoods, and 1 in 39,760 people in southern neighborhoods. So southern neighborhoods would be those closer to Southwick and everything, moving up kind of more in the desolate areas. Well, the western areas would more likely be towards the college and down towards Springfield, which I thought was very interesting as well. But I did do a color code on the bottom, so we can see that green would be the safest area, so you see the more desolate areas like Roanoke Heights, Russell, a lot safer, yellow is more moderate, red is the most unsafe. Westfield kind of has that even ground of that reddish-orange color, meaning that it's not too bad, but it's not great, and we can kind of see the different areas where the red increases. Those are the more unsafe areas versus the green, which are safer. And that brings me to the end of my project, and I want to thank you so much for watching. I will go into a little bit more detail. The way crime is being prevented is an increase in neighborhood watch communities. I did find that like in a town minutes thing, but could not find like good enough information to find more information out about what they are doing with their neighborhood watch, increase in police forces, and I think that's the end of my project. I will lead us with Works Cited, and that will be it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys all had a fantastic semester and happy holidays.